Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about 10 more horror movies that I highly recommend. And with that, let's get to the list.
Can't you hear it? There's someone there.
The Others is a 2001 supernatural psychological horror movie. Written, directed, and scored by Alejandro Amenabar. It stars Nicole Kidman, Fiona LaFlanagan, and Christopher Eccleston. In 1945, immediately following the Second World War, a woman who lives with her two photosensitive children becomes convinced that their home is being haunted.
Where is my daughter? Are you mad? I am your daughter.
When I saw that this was added to Shudder, it just reminded me of what a great movie this is. And I'm not going to say it's been forgotten, because if you mention this to a lot of people, they're going to remember this movie. But it's not really being talked about anymore, which is strange to me because it's one of the better psychological, twist kind of movies. To me, it's right up there with The Sixth Sense, where if you know the twist, it's kind of ruined. But if you don't know going in, you have no idea what the twist of the movie, so to speak, is, it is really well done. But it's so beautifully put together. It's well shot, well directed. The cast is fantastic, because most of the time when you see kid actors, they're not very believable. But these two, I think, do a great job, and it's easy to really buy into their characters and this story. But my favorite thing about this movie is the mood that is set, the way everything looks, the fog, the creepy, wet, eerie, cold factor of it. It's really, really excellent. So if it's been a while since you've seen this, or if you're one of those lucky ones out there that have never seen this, do yourself a favor and check this one out.
Love is a knife with a blade for a handle.
All You Need Is Death is a 2023 folk horror movie. Written and directed by Paul Duane, it stars Simone Collins, Gary Whelan, and Catherine Siggins. A young couple who collect rare folk ballads discover the dark side of love when they record and translate an ancient taboo folk song.
I know the song you want. It's not even in Irish. But whatever it is that came before Irish.
So I'm not even exactly sure where I heard of this movie. I'm pretty sure it was in one of the comments that one of you guys left. So to whoever did leave that comment, thank you. This movie is really cool. For one, I love folk movies, and especially the smaller, creepy indie ones, because there's just something, I don't know, more believable to me about them when it's a smaller kind of movie with a cast you don't recognize. It's easier to fall into the story. But I'm not gonna say it's perfect. This is a very small, independent production, like a lot of the movies over on Shudder. And there are a few little things here and there that hold it back from being exceptional. But with that being said, I do think it's still very entertaining. And there's some really disturbing imagery, and it does some things and goes directions that I did not expect or see coming. But I think if you're a fan of folk indie horror, this is one you definitely need to see. Beezel is a 2024 supernatural horror movie. Co-written and directed by Aaron Fradkin, it stars Victoria Fradkin, Nicholas Robin, and Bob Gallagher. Over 60 years, 3 guests of a cursed home discover an eternal witch that lives beneath it, with an insatiable thirst for living souls.
Why are you doing this, man?
I've made a lot of sacrifices in my life, and I was chosen by her.
So when I recommended this one before, I've definitely heard mixed opinions on this. Some people love it like I do, and then others are like, what are you talking about, man? That movie is trash, like whatever. I get it. this movie is not going to be for everyone. There is a campiness. Some of the acting at times isn't amazing. But overall, the way this movie looks, the practical effects, the story that's presented here, I think is really cool. And at least for me, I thought it was rad. I really enjoyed this movie. And like I said, I've already recommended this last year, but it is now available on Tubi, whereas before it was still a rental, but now anybody, even if you're kind of skeptical and not sure if you'd like it, hey, it's free on Tubi. Go click on it, watch it for, 10, 20 minutes. If you're not into it, turn it off. No harm, no foul. So with that, I feel a lot more comfortable telling people this is one to definitely check out. So I think if you don't look at this through a microscope and pick it apart and just enjoy it for what it is, I think you could really have a good time with it.
God have mercy on us all.
The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a 2023 supernatural horror movie. Directed by Andre Overdahl, it's based on The Captain's Log, a chapter of the 1897 novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. It stars Corey Hawkins, Aisling Francosi, and David Desmalchin. A crew sailing from Bulgaria on the Black Seas to England find that they are carrying very dangerous cargo known as Dracula.
Something ripped apart the animals.
All the livestock?
This looks like a bite.
Search the ship. Everywhere.
I think this is an absolute travesty. It's a crime how little this movie was talked about, how under the radar it flew. It's one of the movies from 2023 that I was the most sad didn't get more love. Now, I'm not saying this movie's perfect. I'm not saying it's a game changer. I'm not saying it's gonna blow your mind or anything like that. But there is a really cool vampire movie here that I think a lot of people have missed. For one, it looks incredible. The ship, the way the water looks, it feels very real and authentic. It feels cold and creepy. It goes in some directions and has a lot more balls than I expected it to. And as far as different Draculas and the way they look and how they operate, I think this one did a really cool job. But unfortunately, like a lot of vampire movies over the last few years, box office wise, it just did horribly. Nobody saw this movie, and I don't know why that is exactly. It's the same with every other vampire movie up until we just recently saw that change with Nosferatu, which is killing it right now in theaters. But this movie is so moody and atmospheric. The cast is incredible. I love David Desmalchin's character in this. It's not a huge role. It's a little bit of one of his side character roles. The guy needs more lead roles, in my opinion. I think he's amazing. He was amazing in Late Night with the Devil. Just everything this guy does is fantastic. So I want to see more of him, but he's great in this. So is Aisling Francosi. She's had a lot of roles in horror movies over the last few years and just kills every single one of them. It's part of what I was so excited about last year with stop motion, because she doesn't get enough lead roles and this woman can act. But I think this is a gorgeous movie that's entertaining and definitely worth watching, and one you absolutely should add to your list.
Whatever did this, I can kill it.
Prey is a 2022 sci-fi horror movie. Directed by Dan Trachtenberg, it stars Amber Midthunder and Dakota Beavers. It's set on the northern Great Plains in North America in 1719. It revolves around Naru, a skilled Comanche warrior who must survive against the Predator on its first hunt on Earth. So there's two reasons why I'm talking about this week. One, it's available to stream on Tubi. So if you're someone out there that hasn't had Hulu over the last couple years, and so you've yet to check this one out, now's your time. It's free on Tubi. And this is a really, really good Predator movie. movie. But the second reason is that there's a new Predator movie this year, Predator Badlands. I talked about it briefly on my most recent video where I was talking about my 15 most anticipated horror movies that are coming out this year. But from everything I've heard, it's going to be unique and really well done. And it's the thing I love about Dan Trachtenberg. He's adding these new twists and turns to the Predator franchise. And so it's not just the same old thing being done over and over, kind of like we have seen. He's taking it from these different angles and perspectives. And from what I've heard, Predator Badlands is supposed to take place basically with the Predator as your protagonist. You're seeing it through his eyes, so to speak. I don't think you're actually going to see it POV, but you're seeing the story through him as the main character. And I think that could be so interesting. But with Prey, there was a lot of that same unique feel to it because the Predator is on its first hunt on Earth, so it doesn't know how the species work exactly. It's kind of working its way up through different animals and things like that. Two, it doesn't have the same high-tech weaponry. I mean, it does have high-tech weapons, but not on the same level as that we've seen in other films. But it gives it a different wrinkle because of that. And then on top of that, the people that are really fighting this are these natives that know the land and know how to fight in this real guerrilla warfare type of way. And it adds so much to this story. Now, I'm not gonna say this movie's perfect. Some of the CGI is a little bit, not the greatest, but it's because it had a very small budget. This was not a theatrical release. This was straight to Hulu. And thank God they learned because a lot of people watched this. And so Predator Badlands is going to be in theaters. So if you haven't seen this or if it's been a while, this is a great time to check it out while it's free on Tubi. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is a 2024 post-apocalyptic action thriller, co-written, directed, and produced by George Miller. It's the fifth film in the Mad Max franchise and stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, and Tom Burke. It's the origin story of a renegade warrior, Furiosa, before her encounter and team up with Mad Max.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
Okay, before you guys come at me saying, hey, that's not a horror movie, I am not saying Furiosa is a horror movie. This is just a list of my highly recommended movies, and sometimes I like to throw in some that are not exactly horror, that are more thriller, action kind of films, because I know that most horror fans, like myself, are still gonna enjoy these. And I think this is a perfect example because it's gory, it's brutal, there's a lot of action and violence, and most horror fans I know love the Mad Max movies. But it's a real shame how few people went out to support this movie because it's really good. And especially when you see the numbers of Mad Max Fury Road. I mean, so many people went to the theaters to see that one. It made tons of money, which is why they greenlit this in the first place. And so I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if it's because it wasn't called Mad Max or whatnot. But I'm telling you right now, this is as good, if not better, in my opinion, than Mad Max Fury Road. It's exciting, it's wild, it's creative. There's so much lore here. A lot of the Mad Max universe is fleshed out even more in this, which is so much fun. It's incredible looking. The cast is absolutely great. Chris Hemsworth is having a blast with this role, and Anya Taylor-Joy is just such a badass in this. So if you haven't seen this and you're in the mood for an action thriller, this is one that I highly recommend.
Wake up!
Lovely, Dark, and Deep is a 2023 horror movie, written and directed by Teresa Sutherland in her feature-length debut. It stars Georgina Campbell, Nick Blood, and Wei Ching Ho. A new backcountry ranger travels alone through the dangerous wilderness, hoping to uncover the origins of a tragedy that has haunted her since she was a child.
And like the birds. Wake up!
I mentioned this one other time last year. It's another movie that just really flies under the radar. I want more of you guys to see this because especially if you appreciate slow burn, psychological horror movies, this is a really, really good one. For one, I think Georgina Campbell is incredible. She was great in Barbarian and she's just as good in this. But it's moody and creepy and atmospheric and surprising. It goes in some really unique directions and does things that I didn't see coming. But it's one that gets weird, that's gonna tease and mess with your brain, and it'll be hard to follow at times. But I think if you stick with it, it's worth it. Because it's one of those psychological movies that'll stick with you after you've seen it. And the cinematography, the way this movie is shot is incredible, especially when you think about this as being a first-time filmmaker. But I think this movie is really, really good. And if that sounds like something you would be interested in, then do yourself a favor and make this the next thing that you watch.
They like you.
Talk to Me is a 2022 Australian supernatural horror movie, written and directed by Danny and Michael Philippou in their feature directorial debut, with a concept by Daley Pearson. It stars Sophie Wilde, Alexandra Jensen, and Joe Bird. When a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces.
Talk to me.
It's been a while since I mentioned this movie, and I definitely feel like it's one of the best from the last 5 years. It's one of those that the longer I've said on it, the more I've thought about it, and then rewatching it a couple times, just the higher up it is ranked in my favorite movies of the last 10 years. It just has so many elements that made it unique and feel refreshing and new. And in a lot of ways, it falls into that same category for me anyway, of movies like It Follows or Hereditary. Now, I'm not saying it's quite as good as maybe Hereditary, because to me, Hereditary is one of the best horror films we've seen, especially in the last 20 years. But I think it deserves to be remembered. And so I wanted to mention it again on this list, just to remind everybody that, hey, this movie's out there and it's streaming. And if you haven't seen it since it first hit theaters, or if for whatever reason you've never seen it, I think it's definitely one you need to see. It's so moody and atmospheric and creepy. It's extremely well shot and well directed. The cast is phenomenal, especially when you think about how this cast and everybody involved was green in a lot of ways. These aren't super experienced people making this movie, and yet they pulled off what I thought was the second best horror movie of 2023. The only movie I put above this one was When Evil Lurks, and that to me is just a modern masterpiece. But it's such a unique way of presenting this supernatural force that in a lot of ways feels more like a drug, because it really is a metaphor in a lot of ways for drug addiction and teens experimenting and using these different drugs and how that can go too far. I think this movie is a true gem and an absolute must-see for any fan of horror.
What if I really was someone else? Very far away on the other side of a television screen.
I Saw the TV Glow is a 2024 psychological horror drama, written and directed by Jane Schoenbrunn. It stars Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne. Two teenagers bond over their love of a supernatural TV show, but one day it is mysteriously canceled.
Sometimes the pink opaque feels more real than real life.
Maddie, it was a TV show.
Are you sure that's all it was?
I have so many mixed feelings on this movie, because when I came out of the theater, I was frustrated with it. The ending of it left me scratching my head and confused and just not knowing what to even think of it, because it's really well done. I mean, the cast is incredible. It looks amazing. Everything about it is very well executed. But it's confusing. It's not an easy movie to follow. And I know that a lot of people did understand it. And I had a number of people explain to me the meaning and how this is really a metaphor for transition, for someone that is transgender and transitioning into a different sex and their experience and what it feels like to not be in the right body, so to speak. And when I knew that and realized that, it clicked, and this movie became so powerful. And I have a lot of friends and people I've known throughout my life that are transgender, so it's not like I'm not somewhat experienced with that. But unless you personally experience a lot of things and you're in the shoes of a lot of things, it's hard to understand. Either way, I'm not telling you how you should feel on that whole subject matter. I'm just talking about this movie as a piece of art. And as far as art goes, this movie's incredible. It looks fantastic. It's moody. It's emotional. It takes you on a ride. And like I said, even if you don't understand all of it, like I did, it's still a damn good movie on any level. But it's not really a traditional kind of horror movie. This is an A24 art house kind of movie that the horror lies in the dread, that lies in the uncomfortability of the situation and things like that. It isn't about jump scares. It isn't about, monsters, things like that. So that's not what this is. So don't go into it expecting that. Either way, if that sounds intriguing to you, I think you should definitely add this to your list.
My body back.
Come and get it.
Freaky is a 2020 comedy slasher horror movie. Directed by Christopher Landon, it stars Vince Vaughn, Catherine Newton, and Uriah Shelton. After swapping bodies with a deranged serial killer, a high school senior discovers that she has fewer than 24 hours before the change becomes permanent. So I always like to end these lists with something to not overthink, something that's just fun, that's a great popcorn kind of horror movie, and there's nothing out there, at least in the last few years, that fits that better than this movie, because it's so much fun, it's stupid, it's campy, it's silly, but it also pays a lot of tributes to a lot of the slasher movies. It also gets bloody and gory, there's some fantastic kills, it's just a very, very fun kind of movie. Besides that, seeing Vince Vaughn portraying a 17-year-old high school girl is incredible. It's a must-see TV. I also love Catherine Newton, and getting to see her as a serial killer in this is great as well. Either way, like I said, this is one to not overthink, not take too serious, but one to just have fun with. And I think it's a perfect pick for this Saturday night. So do yourself a favor, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And I also want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean so much to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description, or you can become a channel member by clicking on that join button down there and help the channel out that way. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button, and remember guys, horror can be fun. And if you enjoyed this, click right here to watch me talk about my 15 most anticipated horror movies this year. And I'll see you guys next time.